You don't hate going out. You just stopped pretending it's better than being home. That shift happened quietly. No announcement, no dramatic decision. You noticed the best parts of your week happen inside your own walls, and you stopped apologizing for it. Most men your age still perform the obligatory, "Yeah, we should grab drinks sometime." They say they've been busy. But you've been home, deliberately, comfortably. And it suits you. You don't leave the house to feel alive. You feel more alive when you stay. There's a difference. Most men never figure that out. You've got your routines, morning coffee before anyone else is awake. A project you actually care about. The particular silence of a Saturday that belongs entirely to you. These aren't consolation prizes. They're the actual point. You stopped needing the noise to confirm something was happening. That took longer than it should have, but you got there. Here's what's underneath that. Your nervous system runs differently than it did at 25. When you were younger, novelty felt like fuel. New environments, new people. The next thing. That wasn't wrong, it was right for that stage. But somewhere in your 40s, the math changed. Stimulation that used to charge you started costing more than it returned. Every man has a threshold. Below it, things feel flat. Above it, things feel draining. For men who genuinely love being home, that threshold sits lower than the world assumes it should. That's not a flaw. It's just your setting. Your inner world generates enough. You don't need much from outside to feel engaged. The problem isn't that you're understimulated. The problem is most of the world is built for men who need more. You walk into a crowded event and you're fine for about an hour. Then something shifts. Not anxiety, not discomfort exactly. A quiet awareness that you'd rather be somewhere else. The conversations feel thin. The noise feels unnecessary. You're still present, still polite. But part of you has already left. You don't fake it the way you used to. That's the real change. At 30, you'd push through. Perform another 2 hours of availability you didn't have. Come home wired and hollow. Now you leave when you're done. No guilt, no long explanation. Just a handshake and a quiet exit. Men around you sometimes read that as coldness. It isn't. It's honest management of your own energy. There's something else here. Home isn't a retreat from life. It's where you actually live it. Your projects are there. Your thinking happens there. The books, the work you care about, the particular quality of a Tuesday night where nothing is required and everything feels possible. You're not hiding from the world. You've built something inside your own space that the world outside rarely matches. That took years. Most men never build it. They stay uncomfortable everywhere because they never invested in anywhere specific. You did. And here's what that investment actually looks like. It's not about the square footage. It's not about having a nice place. It's that you know exactly where you think best. You know the chair. You know the light. You know the time of day when your mind is sharpest, and you've learned to protect it. You've stopped scheduling things that eat into it. You've stopped feeling like that makes you difficult. Other men drift through their own homes. They're present in body, but somewhere else mentally. Always half planning the next obligation. Always half distracted by what's coming. You actually live where you live. That's rarer than it sounds. Most men spend decades chasing something out there. A deal. A title. A room that finally feels like enough. You stopped chasing. Not because you gave up. Because you looked around and realized you'd already built the thing worth staying for. That's a different kind of ambition. Quieter. More deliberate. Most people mistake it for having no ambition at all. They're wrong. You also stop performing availability you don't have. You don't leave your phone face up waiting for it to interrupt something good. You don't respond immediately just to seem accessible. You don't manufacture urgency around other people's timelines. When you're home, you're actually there. Not half in, half out. Not one eye on the door. You've got a way of being present in your own life that most men are still searching for in their 50s. They keep thinking the next trip, the next event, the next thing will finally feel like enough. You already know it won't. Because you stopped running that experiment years ago. You found what actually works. And it doesn't require leaving. Some men call that settling. You know it isn't. Settling is accepting less than you want. What you have is exactly what you want. That distinction matters. Most men never get there. Now here's the honest part. You know the difference between solitude and avoidance. You've felt both. Avoidance has a low-grade tension to it. Something unresolved leaking into the quiet. That's not what this is. What you have is different. It's the comfort of a man who knows himself well enough to know what he needs, and respects himself enough to provide it. Most men spend decades performing for rooms that never really saw them, grinding for approval from people they didn't respect, showing up to things that had nothing to offer. You stopped doing that. That's not isolation, that's discernment. Men who don't understand this have usually never been comfortable alone with themselves. They mistake your preference for withdrawal. They read your contentment as depression. They assume that because noise energizes them, your preference for home must mean something's wrong. It doesn't. You're not the man who can't connect. You're the man who connects on his own terms. Less frequently. More genuinely. That's harder to build than it looks. There's also something that happens to your thinking when you spend real time at home. Not just relaxing, actually thinking. Most men never get quiet enough to hear themselves clearly. There's always something filling the space. A screen. An obligation. Another person's agenda bleeding into their attention. They go years without a single uninterrupted thought that's entirely their own. You know what it feels like to sit with an idea long enough to actually develop it. To let something that's been bothering you surface and resolve without distraction. To make a decision slowly because you gave it the space it deserved. That's not nothing. That's how a man actually knows his own mind. Here's the deeper part of that. When a man spends enough time in genuine solitude, he starts to separate what he actually thinks from what he was told to think. What he actually wants from what he was supposed to want. That process doesn't happen in crowds. It doesn't happen in noise. It doesn't happen when you're always available to everyone else's version of reality. It happens in the quiet, in the particular stillness of a home that belongs to you, where no one is performing and nothing is required. That's where a man's real values get clarified, his real priorities, the things he'd actually choose if he stopped factoring in everyone else's expectations. Most men never do that work. They reach 60 still living by a script they inherited at 20. Still chasing things that were never really theirs to chase. You did the work. Maybe not all at once. Maybe not consciously. But the time you spent at home, in your own company, in your own silence, that wasn't wasted time. That was the most important work you did. And men who know their own minds don't need to fill the room with noise to feel like something's happening. They're already somewhere. There's a specific kind of confidence in men who don't need the room. It doesn't perform. It doesn't require an audience. It doesn't announce itself. It's the confidence of a man who went home on a Friday night and had a genuinely good time. Who turned down the invitation without guilt. Who built a life that fits his actual wiring, instead of one designed to impress people he barely knows. You're not missing anything. You've been out there, the comparison isn't abstract. You chose this with full information. That's not avoidance. That's a man who knows what he actually wants, and stopped pretending otherwise. Most men spend their whole lives working up to that. You're already there.